Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. As we all know, Tommy Robinson is definitely quite the character. I am also quite the character. Actually, I'm too. Who said what about the other five? Shut up, you. I am not that many characters. I think two is more than enough for me. But jokes aside, Tommy Robinson is definitely a character who, the moment you hear the name, you can instantly relate to if you're an English patriot. But before I speak about Tommy Robinson, I do want to speak about Paul Thorpe, because there is something that he has pointed out that I actually agree with him on. It's not a novel concept by any stretch of the imagination, but he was responding to one of his detractors. I mean, I'm not exactly a big fan of Paul Thorpe and Richard Inman, what I feel is pussyfooting around the problems. But what I will say to Paul's credit, and for once it is actually to do with his bank balance, is this detractor said that Paul was making money off of Tommy Robinson's name. I mean, there are people that make money off of Tommy Robinson's name. However, the thing is, he has made a very valid point. Think about it. If I was to be making money off of Tommy Robinson, which, let me be clear, one, I've never asked for donations, and two, I would never want to be in a position where I'm asking for donations. So in that regard, I'm pretty much the same as Paul Thorpe. I do not want to be making money off of anybody's back, quite frankly. But if he was, I think if anything, having yourself associated with Tommy Robinson, for once, my mum, my sister and all them are actually quite right. As much as I'm loath to say it, because they have usually been against me a lot of the time. But for once I have to concede and say they're right in that associating yourself with Tommy Robinson effectively makes it very difficult for you financially. And of course that is not in the sense of, oh, you associate with Tommy Robinson, all of a sudden he goes to the bank and he gets your credit card and fucking withdraws a 5-figure salary or something. Sorry, not salary. But I'm talking about it in the context of, if you're associating with them, all of a sudden you'll find a lot of companies don't want to touch you with a barge pole. I've already made it quite clear that there have been two particular companies that maybe I'll mention. Oh shit, I'm not paying attention. I'm going to be making a deposit to the hospital in a minute. My heart and my lungs. Anyway, the fact is, if you associate with them, maybe I'll mention the two companies when I mention the main company I'm going to be talking about in July, the ones that discriminated against me, that broke the Data Protection Act and effectively treated me like dirt. Well, at least in the last 2 years of my employment anyway. But there will be companies who basically say, you know what, you're associated with a man who is, and they'll usually insert some left-wing dog-whistling tripe. They'll say he's a far-right racist and a football hooligan, a thug, and he stirs up hatred, and he's Islamophobic, and insert typical generic shit here. Of course, they won't provide evidence, because that would imply that some of these guys have some semblance of intelligence. Who said, where's your intelligence at? Shut up, you. No, this would imply that they would actually have some semblance of intelligence and could actually hold a decent argument. But as I've said many times before, when it comes to Tommy Robinson, you can usually dispute any lefty NPC's arguments by just saying two words: provide evidence. Because here's the thing, a lot of the people who claim that Tommy Robinson is a racist or a thug or a football hooligan and blah blah blah, usually they don't really provide a lot of evidence. The only thing they could probably make stick is the fact that he's got a criminal record. That's it. And even then, that isn't going to stick very well, because a lot of the crimes that Tommy's done pale in comparison to our treacherous establishment. Everything else, the moment they try to say anything, you can destroy their arguments. When you just say, provide evidence. Say provide evidence, and their argument evaporates. Just like that. Because they will never be able to provide any evidence whatsoever that Tommy is whatever they say he is. But the main point of what I'm trying to say as far as Paul Thorpe's little point is concerned is that Tommy Robinson is effectively, if anything, a financial repellent. Maybe not so much in the form of throwing a few green queens in the air and then the green queens fly away from Tommy Robinson as fast as they can, but it still rings true when it comes down to, if you're in a job and they see you're associated with Tommy Robinson, they'll do everything they can to cut ties with you. When all it should come down to, as far as your job is concerned, there's only one of two logical and justifiable ways they can do that shit. There's only one or two examples where that is perfectly stroke number one, justifiable as far as getting rid of someone is concerned. The first is they're inciting violence, and the second is they are encouraging acts of terrorism. Maybe you could go as far as threats as well, but that's about it. Other than that, should a person lose their job for their political views? No. If I support the monster raving loony party, I don't, just to be clear, but if I supported them, should I be dismissed for that? No. Now, on the other hand, if you were to say that if I said I supported an extremist group that encourages and promotes violence and terrorism, should I be then sacked from the job? Absolutely. But it doesn't change the fact that people will go hook or by crook to get rid of you. As I've said, I've had it happen twice. One for a business that operates in conjunction with the railway system, and the other was a charity. Well, let me tell you, I certainly didn't feel charity when I lost my job. But Paul does make the valid point that if he was to use that name, and I think he's even said it, he's actually lost money, and he's making a fraction of what he normally would get if he wasn't supporting Tommy. So he is quite right to defend himself on that and say, you know what, that's complete bullshit, matey. And I fundamentally agree with calling him out on it. I'm wondering when he's going to try and call me out for saying that him and Richard Inman are pussyfooting around the problems we have right now. But we'll get to that later. Let's get on to Tommy Robinson, which is really why you're here, let's face it. So, I mentioned that Tommy Robinson was to be freed at the end of this week. Well, I also want to discuss what I personally think he should do, if I haven't already in my live stream, as I do think that it is going to be very important for Tommy's livelihood. I just fucking realised there's an adult in that what looks like a pram being carried by a bicycle. Anyway, Tommy Robinson, as far as being released is concerned, what do I think he should do? Well, I think first and foremost, I think he should look at getting his well-being back, because obviously being in solitary confinement for 7 months is going to have done an absolute number on his well-being. His health will have significantly deteriorated. It's the longest amount of time that he has spent in prison since the time in Leeds, where he publicly quoted stuff in the public domain about a Leeds group of people who like to get a little touchy-feely with the girls, and yet even though he followed the reporting restrictions to the letter and quoted everything in the public domain, Tommy Robinson was first arrested on a false charge of breach of the peace, and then they locked him up for contempt of court. Do you mind, Whitlam? But the truth is, Keir the traitor Starmer and the oligarchy do not care about that, just so long as the man is locked up. It's not a matter of what he's done, it's a matter of who he is. And what had Tommy Robinson done to deserve 7 months in prison? Even more so, 7 months in solitary fucking confinement? He made the government look stupid. He exposed the treachery and the deceit of councils, media, lawyers and the government in the Silence documentary, which I actually have pinned as my top comment on Twitter. And I will, as always, be linking both my email and my Twitter, like I normally do, in the description below. Because at the end of the day, the judge may have said that Tommy Robinson cannot post the Silence documentary out there, and he's made a judgment call to say, you know what, I promise I will not put it up ever again, I will not do anything that could basically get me sent back, and that he will follow this in good faith. And people might be thinking, well, you should take the video down. But no, here's the thing, as I said, the judges have not mentioned anything about us posting that documentary. And right now, the more of us that post that documentary online, the more the government gets exposed. The more the English establishment, well, I say English in name only, because let's face it, they're about as English as a French baguette. But this establishment needs to be called out for their treachery, their two-tier justice, their two-tier policing, and effectively their two-tier governing as well. His well-being and his mental health have been sabotaged by Keir the Traitor Starmer, Shabana Mahmood, and all the higher-ups, and of course Nicola the Monster Marfleet, who is the governor of HMP Woodhill. Just when we thought that we were going to get some kind of result when he was in Belmarsh and the governor was conceding we'll give him his rights, they then moved him to Woodhill just so that they could basically make all the efforts null and void. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks, because say it with me, it doesn't suit the narrative. Keir the Traitor Starmer knows exactly what he's doing, just like Shabana Mahmood, the Attorney General, and all the others in the establishment and the oligarchy. But what sickens me is there are still NPCs out there who still think, oh, the Attorney General got involved? No, that's not politically motivated. Yes, it fucking is, because who brought the case? It was him. He was the one who decided it was in the public's interest to lock a man up for putting a documentary online. And that is fundamentally wrong. Now, I think a lot of us would say, if it was something to do with, oh, I don't know, there was an ongoing court investigation into an alleged group of people doing some horrible things, and Tommy went and prejudiced the case by saying, oh, they're guilty, Your Honour, they're guilty, Your Honour, then yeah, absolutely he should be in jail. But Tommy never did such a thing. All he did was put out a documentary that the Americans had already put out in the public domain, even though Tommy was willing to obey this gagging order, despite the fact it basically isn't even worth the paper it's fucking printed on, and therefore any contempt of court would have been thrown out by a normal judge just like that. But as we all know, Tommy Robinson is no ordinary person, or if people want to split hairs and use his real name, Stephen Yaxley Lennon. But honestly, who gives a fuck what his real name is? I don't care if his real name's Shit Stirrer of Buggery Mountain. Now that would be one hell of a title though, wouldn't it? Anyway, I don't care what his real fucking name is. The truth is that Tommy Robinson was locked up simply because of who he is, not what he's actually done. And the way I look at it, they tortured him for it. And as I've said before, the UK limit on how long somebody can spend in solitary confinement before they have to go under review is 3 days. If we were to go by the ECHR, stroke number 2, the ECHR, if I can get the bloody letters out, is 14 days. And that's if we go by their regulations, which frankly we should have left them in the fucking first place, because they're allowing illegals to stay in our country on the back of human rights. But that's something, of course, the mainstream media, all those lefty NPCs, are not going to want to tell you. But he stayed in there for 7 months without review, or with review, and was still forced to serve his time in solitary anyway. And I guarantee you, if this was anyone else, human rights lawyers would be flocking in their thousands to take on their case, because there is no shot this would not make national news. But Tommy Robinson, nobody even bats an eye. The human rights lawyers become the he has no human rights lawyers. They become cowards. They become hypocrites. They become spineless cowards. And that is a shame, because I thought that the justice system was supposed to be used equally and fairly, not weaponized against ordinary English fucking people. But that is exactly what Keir the Traitor Starmer is doing with our legal system. How Lucy Connolly has had her appeal rejected. How they were saying, oh, it triggered racial hatred. No, it did not. A migrant is not a race. A migrant is a type of person, not what characteristics that person has. Just like a Muslim is part of Islam, and as such, if you are criticizing Islam, you are criticizing a religion, not a race. But of course, lefties will just say Islamophobe or racist or far right, because that's all they can do. Dog whistle terms, slave phrases for gramophone minds. That's all they're capable of. But Tommy Robinson, he should be looking after himself, number one, and number two, there's been a threat towards Tommy Robinson where effectively they're saying that he will be targeted by bandits and outlaws. Almost sounds like medieval stuff, doesn't it? Bandits and outlaws. Now, when I think about that, I think they're trying to detract from saying a so-called religion of peace who absolutely hates Tommy's guts, because let's face it, Tommy Robinson isn't exactly the greatest person in Islam's book, quite frankly. That title is reserved for Muhammad. But they will look at him and they will want his head on a spike. They will want to behead Tommy Robinson. They will want to end his free trial of life. I wouldn't be calling them bandits and outlaws. I'd be calling them for what they truly are. Scum. Because that's what a lot of these people are. And if you need any more proof of that, just take a look at the little prick that Keir the traitor Starmer did everything he could to protect. Axel Radaku Banana. The boy who butchered 3 girls. Bebby King. Alice de Silva Aguilar. Elsie Dot. God rest their souls. Butchered those 3 girls. One of them stabbed 120 fucking times. But we're supposed to say Islam is a religion of peace. Yeah, bollocks to that. He is not safe in this country. As long as Tommy remains here in the UK, he will always be in danger. Whether it's from Islam, whether it's from lefty NPCs, whether it's Antifa, whether it's Hate Not Hope, whether it's the media, whether it's the government, he will never be safe in this country. For the simple fact, they will do everything they can to see him killed or in jail, or both. But what they fail to realise in the establishment is that if they do end up killing Tommy Robinson, it will spark an arlution. Like, the moment he dies, the whole country is going to be off its tits. The moment he dies, everything is going to kick off. Just like that. They know that. They'll be making a martyr out of Tommy Robinson, and they will have hundreds and thousands of English patriots vying for their blood. And let me be clear, as I've always done, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see a violent arlution. I don't want to see civil blank. A lot of people recently have been saying, I'm not a fan of this CW stuff. Let me tell you something, I'm not a fucking fan of it either. But I have to mention it because it's the cold bitter truth. And the cold bitter truth is, we are heading in that direction. Like Keir the traitor Starmer has pulled down the mast and he's going full mast in that fucking direction. That's the cold bitter truth of the matter. He's doing everything he can to make it kick off. And the way I look at it, I don't think he even needs to do anything. I mean, just look at the policies he's implementing. Look at all the people he's released. Look at the people that he's been persecuting, and the fact the little fucker had the audacity to say, I've not heard of the case of Lucy Connolly. Like hell have you? It was one of the most prominent cases in the Southport riots. You can't sit here and tell me that you, Keir the Traitor Starmer, did not hear about Lucy Connolly. My left fucking bollock, did you not hear that? You heard of it, Keir the Traitor Starmer. You just didn't want to say anything because you knew full well that you're responsible for a lot of these riots and you're responsible for a lot of these political prisoners in your two-tier justice society. That's what it really comes down to, Keir the Traitor Starmer. You just don't want to admit it, do you, wanker? Well, you will be held accountable one day. We, the English people, will see to that. We will have you stand trial for your treachery against the English people. And we will want the death penalty for traitors like you. Just like we did back in ye olde days. Just like when deserters tried to leave in those world blanks. The two of them. What they did with deserters? Bang. They shot them. And if it were down to me, rather than have your sectarian ass protecting Axel Radaku Banana, I would have given Banana the chair. And I'm not talking about a dining room chair, I'm talking an electric chair. And we'll see how he likes dancing to a different fucking tune. Because the way I see it, anybody that goes out of their way to murder 3 children doesn't deserve life on this earth. If you violate and go after our girls, or any child, you don't deserve life. But the second thing, as I've said, that Tommy needs to do, he's not safe in this country. I don't think any of us would blame him if he left England. I know he will say that he believes in Britain and he is standing for the good fight as far as the English people are concerned, and he wants to unite the kingdom and all that. Realistically, I don't think the peaceful resolution is going to happen. I think there's only one way it's going to end, and as far as I see it, I think for Tommy to survive, he needs to get out of the UK and go seek asylum in the USA. Trump will welcome him with open arms. Elon Musk will welcome him with open arms. JD Vance will welcome him with open arms. The only arms that will take Tommy Robinson in this country are the long arms of the law, quite frankly. Because while we may support him, we may appreciate him, while we admire him, unfortunately, the long arm of the law is going to do everything it can to wrap itself around Tommy's neck and drag him back to the cells, kicking and screaming. We know this, but at the end of the day, it's down to Tommy. He has to make that choice. We can't do it for him. We can advise, but we can't say, you need to leave the country now, because at the end of the day, that's his choice. But if I was in his shoes, would I do that? 100 fucking percent. 100%. Thank you. I want to be clear though, just before we get off it, is when I say the only arms that will welcome him, I mean it in the sense of the country in general, not us, the people. The people would obviously welcome Tommy with open arms, because as I said, we admire the guy. But as far as the establishment is concerned, the only people that would welcome him is effectively the law, the two-tier justice system, the two-tier policing society. But as far as he's concerned, he needs to look after himself, and he needs to decide, does he stay in this country? I personally think he should go to the USA, but I will respect whatever decision he decides to make, whether he decides to stay or whether he decides to go. At the end of the day, Tommy Robinson has to look after himself. This is one of those times where he needs to be selfish. Sometimes in order to win a great battle, you have to bring in more troops, or you have to lead from afar. Like the way I slice it, think of Joffrey Baratheon or Joffrey Lannister, whatever the fuck his name is, from Game of Thrones. Imagine a situation where, I know it's not a really good comparison because obviously they're two polar opposites, but imagine for the sake of argument that Tommy Robinson was Joffrey Baratheon and he was sitting out there in the middle of the street with all the peasants and all the King's Guard and whatever, all looking at him, realising what a contemptible prick he is. Now, if those people actually saw him, do you think they're going to sit there and praise his name? No! They're going to want to fucking kick his ass! Like, they would basically want his head on a spike. That is what I mean. He can't sit here anymore. Whereas if he was sitting in another bloody city, like, I don't know, rather than King's Landing, maybe he's in Castle Rock or something. Yes, I'm really impressing you with my Game of Thrones knowledge. Anyway, if he was over there, at least then he wouldn't be in too much danger, as he wouldn't have as many people after him. Obviously, Tommy Robinson is no Joffrey Lannister or whatever, the bastard child of Cersei. No, that would be more like Keir the traitor Starmer. Now, I can understand if people don't like that particular example, as obviously I'm comparing Tommy Robinson to a very dislikable character. However, how about this one? V for Vendetta. Adam Sutler. You could compare him to Keir the traitor Starmer if you so wish. Think of Tommy Robinson as V. Think of him as the person who went out of his way, obviously maybe not the violent tendencies, because obviously that's not Tommy's way. Oh yeah, what about his thuggery? Fuck off. Like, don't even get me started with that shit. But think of him like V, how he's basically inspiring a nation, a country if you will. He inspired the whole of England to rise up against Adam Sutler, because all Adam Sutler demanded in return was our silent and obedient consent. How he wanted to basically rule over the UK as a fascist leader. He wanted to rule over and make sure there was no dissent whatsoever, no other political opponents to oppose him. A true fascist through and through. And V went out of his way to effectively bring about an illusion in that film. He had the entirety of people rise up. Now, in the perspective of stroke number 3, as far as a commander is concerned, is Tommy can't do that if his free trial of life's been taken from him. Adam Sutler ended up taken hostage, and because he ended up dying before the order could be given to all of the army and the police and what have you to fire on the indigenous people of the UK, the people who rose up marched right through them. And then at the end, obviously, the Houses of Parliament were blown up in that film. But it's the perspective of Sutler was taken down so he couldn't give his orders to the people. Likewise, if Tommy Robinson is dead, how is he supposed to guide the people of Britain to a brighter future? That's the way to look at it. The way I see it, this is why I think Tommy Robinson might be better off in the US, as at least then he won't have half as many enemies to deal with. Plus there'll be the Second Amendment, so if he really wants, he can get a hold of a gun so that he can defend himself. That's the way I look at it. Obviously, we shouldn't be looking at it from the perspective of, I want to arm Tommy Robinson. No, far from it. But the one thing it would do is it would guarantee that he is not under a government that would want to lock him up just because of who he is rather than what he's done. The bottom line is, he is not safe in the United Kingdom, but he needs to look after himself, and whatever happens, whatever he decides, we'll all respect him for it. We will be right behind him to provide him that bit of support that he genuinely needs. Because that man hasn't just gone through hell. He's gone through the gates of hell, shook hands with the devil, and come back out a better man. Which is more that can be said about Keir the traitor Starmer, who is about as decent a person as Dick Dastardly was in the Wacky Races. That man could not even attempt to reach a fraction of the integrity of any English person here in the United Kingdom, let alone Tommy Robinson. And Shabana Mahmood is also complicit in this. She was put in her position as Justice Secretary because she ticks a box, rather than is she capable of doing her job without bias. That's the way to look at it. Right now, we have a country that wants to focus on hiring all the box tickers and do that rather than good old-fashioned meritocracy, where people are hired based off of two critical factors. Have you got the qualifications? Can you do the job? That's what it comes down to. We have sectarianist bastards in the houses of treachery, I mean Parliament, or maybe I was right first time, who want to rule over us with an iron fist, who want to replace the white population with cheap labour from third world shitholes. I don't know about you, but we need a commander. We need someone to lead the troops into battle. And I know people may not like the way I've said that, but that's mainly because a lot of these people are what I would say, they're nationalists, but probably more along the lines of civic nationalists. They want to do everything by the book, peacefully and all that. Now, in most cases, that would work. But the cold, bitter truth is, when you have a dictator like Keir the Traitor Starmer, or again, maybe I was right first time, what does peace do? Do you know what happens? Keir the Traitor Starmer sits in his little house, his little office, or stares out of his window and he laughs at us. He laughs that we, the sheep, are still basically stamping our feet. We're like, I've had enough of this, but we don't actually do anything. The only language they'll understand is that of blank. And as I've said, Keir the Traitor Starmer wants this. I know that. But he doesn't realise it'll backfire spectacularly. He has nowhere near enough people to protect him from every person that basically wants Starmer out. There is no shot that he has got enough people to protect him from the hundreds of thousands, if not a million plus people that will want to literally drag him out of office kicking and screaming if necessary. He doesn't have the firepower, he doesn't have the manpower, he doesn't have the woman power, he doesn't have the DEI power, and he doesn't have the people power. We are the people. We are the power. Sounds like Grayskull, doesn't it? But that is the truth. We hold far more power than a lot of us are willing to harness. A lot of us, we could literally have the world in our hands right now. We could literally have this country reformed overnight. No pun intended. We could remove the people in power who have no respect for our people, who have no respect for this country. All we need to do is we need to grow a pair of balls, whether up here or down there, or in my case both, to be able to stand up and say, we've had enough, you do not represent us, you must go. Or we'll drag you out of there. Until we do that, we're banging our heads against a brick wall. Keir the Traitor Starmer and his little nonce party, Labour Party, and I'm not even going to bother saying it this time, they are complicit. They could have had the balls, again, up here or down there, to actually remove this traitor from office by imposing a vote of no confidence. None of them have even attempted to bring a vote of no confidence. And to me, that makes them just as bad as Starmer himself. If you are not willing to cut out the cancer that is infecting our society, then you may as well be the cancer that's killing us.